The following feature presentation is part of the Skywalking Network.
This is what you can look forward to on this marvelous episode 241 of Skywalking Through Neverland. And yes, I really wanted to say that.
And then it also has to somehow tie her into the events of Endgame.
If this film doesn't bring back the technology of pagers, nothing ever will.
And then we'll move on to phase 4, I guess.
That's a lot of math this early in the show.
And the reason why right now there's 2 Captain Marvel movies coming out.
Hey, this is a family show. Watch your language.
What?
Oh, you said flirt.
Flirkin'.
I'm sorry. All right, continue. This is why I should have had therapy, just like Tim Burton said I needed.
And this is what it all boils down to. Carol Danvers has been labeled Marvel's biggest female hero and, quite possibly, Marvel's mightiest Avenger.
Are you ready?
Off to Neverland!
Here we go!
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land.
When I first made Star Wars, everybody in Hollywood said, well, this is a movie Disney should have made.
You're more than just fans. You're family.
Best day ever!
Secrets love.
It's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
Hey.
When you use a bird to write with, it's called tweeting.
When we visit the world of Disney, we never grow old. It's a Peter Pan, Never Land that keeps us young in heart.
This is Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you are skywalking through Neverland. I have a good feeling about this.
Hey, Skywalkers! Hey, are you ready to go higher, further, faster? If so, then we want to welcome you to Skywalking Through Neverland. We are your enthusiastic podcast destination for the many decades of your Star Wars, Disney, and Marvel fandom. I am Richard Woloski, but now everyone please say hello to my sweetie wife, Sarah. Miss Sarah. Miss Marvel Sarah. Mrs. Marvel.
Well, we'll get into that. But I'm excited. It's Captain Marvel show, and we're going to talk all about Captain Marvel, and it's just so exciting that I want to give all of you Skywalkers a big Wookiee hug. And you are our family of Skywalkers, and we really appreciate you guys, because right now you're watching live on Facebook. You're listening wherever you may be. You may be in your car. That's
Anywhere
fun.
you are, we want to say hello. Hello,
Yeah.
face huggers.
Hey. Well, we just love it when you share our joy in this adventure through fandom.
All right, so now we are recording this from Long Beach, California on March the 12th, 2019. So, Goose the Cat, what time is it?
Meow.
Now, Goose, you go and ask Minnie. Because I know Minnie ain't ready.
It's 11:26. Good morning.
See, you ask Goose something like that, and he gets results. Thank you, Goose. No, keep Goose there every week because he'll get Minnie to tell the time.
I think Goose will
Because
be
no one else
in my
can tell you
office.
to tell the time. All right, now, on this episode, we bring in Geek Girl Diva, a.k.a. Shana O'Neil, to cover the new and highly anticipated entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe,
Captain Marvel.
And yes, there will be spoilers.
Warning.
Spoilers ahead!
So we'll keep reminding you of that too, just so there's no issues later on, because we do get spoilery.
But right now, what we want to do is give you a background on the character of Captain Marvel, and we'll also go over why there are 2 Captain Marvel movies coming out within weeks of each other in the theaters right now.
2?
I know.
The future of our world is at stake.
You have a mission.
How do I look? Fresh.
On March 8th. Is this normal?
Pretty much.
Go higher. Go further. Go faster.
About to show these boys how we do it.
Captain Marvel. You know you're glowing, right? This film contains scenes that may be too intense for younger viewers.
All right, so here we go. Here is a history of Captain Marvel. So Captain Marvel is the 21st film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU, or it's also the 9th installment of Phase 3, and Avengers Endgame will be the final installment of Phase 3.
Gotcha.
And then we'll move on to Phase 4, I guess.
That's a lot of math this early in the show.
It's true. Okay, but that's the MCU. But now what we're going to do is we're going to dial it back to the comics. So Captain Marvel has a very dense and long history dating back to the 1960s in the comics. And we're going to give you an abridged version just so you have a good understanding of her comic book history, and so that we do too, because this was very interesting.
Yeah, I was excited about a new Marvel entry, but when they said Captain Marvel, it's like, oh boy. I know there's been a Mr. Captain Marvel and a Miss Captain Marvel and a Shazam, and so now let's bring everything to the forefront so it's clear to everybody, including ourselves.
Okay. All right. So the first Captain Marvel printed by Marvel Comics was created by Stan Lee and Gene Colan in Marvel Superheroes number 12, which came out in December 1967. So we're going back to the 60s. So this predates you, Richard.
It does.
So at this point, Captain Marvel is a male, and this character is an alien military officer, Captain Mar-Vell, of the Kree Imperial Militia, who's sent to observe the planet Earth as it's developing technology to travel into space. Hence, this is the 1960s. Now, Mar-Vell eventually wearies of his superiors' bad intents and allies himself with Earth, and the Kree Empire then brands him a traitor, of course. From then on, Mar-Vell fights to protect Earth from all threats. So that's like the male Captain Marvel. But now Carol Danvers, who we see in the movie as Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers was created by writer Roy Thomas and artist Gene Colan, and first appeared as an officer in the United States Air Force and was a colleague of Mar-Vell in Marvel Superheroes number 13. Now this was in 1968. So this also predates you.
Still, good.
And Danvers later became the first incarnation of Ms. Marvel in Ms. Marvel number 1, which was in 1977.
See, this is why I've been calling Captain Marvel Miss Marvel for the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's confusing. Now, she's called Ms. Marvel after her DNA was fused with Mar-Vell's during an explosion, giving her superhuman powers.
So a little spoiler here. We see that in the film.
We do, yeah. Yeah, so this is where the film kind of kicks in, because they do give her like human and Kree
powers and DNA.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so this comic debuted in the Silver Age of comics, and the character was featured in a self-titled series in the late 1970s before becoming associated with our favorite superhero teams, the Avengers and the X-Men. So came as a standalone comic, and then she joined the Avengers and X-Men. And also, to make things even more confusing, the character has also been known as Binary, Warbird, and Captain Marvel at different times in history. So, but just so you know, and this is what it all boils down to, Carol Danvers has been labeled Marvel's biggest female hero and quite possibly Marvel's mightiest Avenger. So this is what I heard in the lead up to this film, and it got me all excited. I'm like, well, who is this Marvel's mightiest Avenger? Because already the Avengers are pretty awesome.
Yeah, and to clarify, they don't go into really any of this in the film, except her association with Mar-Vell.
Right.
Yes.
Mar-Vell, but in the film, Mar-Vell is not a man. It's played by
Annette Bening.
Annette Bening.
Yes.
Yeah. And you get to know that right away.
But I really want to see Endgame where Captain Marvel is in with the Avengers.
Me too.
And then coming soon, Captain Marvel meets the X-Men. That movie is going to happen. Going to happen.
That's going to be awesome. Okay, so now in 1977, this is when Ms. Marvel number 1 came out, and it really was self-consciously socially progressive for its time. If you think about it, this is the feminist movement. That's what's happening. So this was reflected in the use of the word Ms., so MS. And writer Jerry Conway played a significant role in the character's development, and he wrote in the introduction to the series, quote, you might see a parallel between her quest for identity and the modern woman's quest for raised consciousness, for self-liberation, for identity.
Way before their time.
Yeah. Well,
I guess the 1970s, 1960s, but to have it in a comic book for kids, that's progressive.
That is. That definitely. Okay, now, this is fun part, Richard.
Okay.
What's next here?
Well, this is where we distinguish Miss Marvel from Captain Marvel. Like I was saying, every time I would say, let's go see Miss Marvel, you'd say, no, it's Captain Marvel.
Right.
Now let's go a little bit deeper into one from the other. One name, Miss Marvel to Captain Marvel.
Okay, well, thankfully, io9.com broke this down, and here's what they said. She was originally named Ms. Marvel to differentiate her from the original Kree Captain Marvel, played by Annette Bening in the film, and calling her Ms. now, in this time period, just seemed condescending. So it was standard procedure when the character was introduced in 1968, and then the name stuck. But to introduce Carol Danvers to the Marvel Cinematic Universe now as Ms. Marvel, it just didn't seem right. So calling her Captain Marvel in the comics was a long time coming. So there's no reason to start her out as Ms. Marvel in the movies. Might as well just go straight to Captain Marvel.
All right, I'm seeing a battle of the egos now between Tony Stark and Captain Marvel.
Oh.
And, he's just going to call her Miss Marvel the whole time.
Oh,
I hope he doesn't, because that'll confuse people.
Yeah, it could. Huh. Okay. Well, okay, so powers and abilities here. So Carol Danvers initially possessed superhuman strength, endurance, stamina, physical durability, and a seventh sense. And also she had half human, half Kree physiology, and that rendered her resistant to most toxins and poisons. So now, when she's the character Binary can tap the energy of a white hole, and it allows her full control and manipulation of stellar energies. So stars, she has control over the stars, and therefore control over heat and electromagnetic spectrum and gravity. And also light speed travel and the ability to survive in the vacuum of space also were possible. And she originally only had the power of flight thanks to this contraption under her suit.
So that answers a lot of questions. Going into this, I wondered, her powers are all over the place. Let's narrow down what they are.
Right.
If you have too many powers, then you're like, well, we're not going to ever fear for you because we know you can never die because you have too many powers.
Right.
She's got the power of convenience.
Like Batman's belt.
Yeah, exactly. When someone has just too many powers, it gets confusing. So I like to know exactly what their powers are.
All right, here's an interesting side note that gives another layer to some characters we see in the film. All right, now Maria Rambeau is Carol Danvers' friend in the military, in the Air Force, and she has a daughter, Monica Rambeau,
who plays a very big part in the film.
Yes.
Her decision-making skills are impeccable.
Yes, we won't say it right now. Yes, they are. Now, Monica in the comics becomes another variation of Captain Marvel, and she first appeared in the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16, which was in 1982. So Monica, when she grows up in the comics, is a police lieutenant from New Orleans who possesses the power to transform herself into any form of energy. Her powers were briefly altered so that she cannot transform to energy, but instead can generate a personal force field, which also is good. Now, she's a member of the Avengers and at one point served as their leader, and she eventually ceded the Captain Marvel name to the original Captain Marvel's son, and then took the name Photon or Pulsar. Ugh. I love that. Pulsar.
Yeah. They should just pick one name and stick with it.
Yeah.
It's getting way confusing.
Uh-huh.
However,
well, it's comics, so they just kind of go all over the place, right?
Right, but when they're in different groups, they're different names. Now, if you want to talk confusing, well, take a knee.
Okay.
Take a knee, because we want to go over something which confused me for decades and decades and decades, and finally, I have the answer between Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel.
And what you mean by that is Marvel Studios' Captain Marvel and DC's Captain Marvel. And the reason why right now there's 2 Captain Marvel movies coming out.
Yes, only one can't call itself Captain Marvel. Now, I went on to many different websites just to gather all the information to make sure everything was flowing. But I want to give a big shout out to Mental Floss because I got a lot of this information on their site. All right, now sit down, grab a pen, pay attention. So, after the success of DC's Superman, there were lots and lots of cheap knockoffs. However, there was only one real competitor, and that was from Fawcett Comics and their big hero, Captain Marvel. Okay?
Yeah.
So there's a Fawcett Comics, and they had a character named Captain Marvel.
Now, when was this?
This was in 1939.
Okay.
And this Captain Marvel, who will later on be known as Shazam, he was created by Bill Parker and C.C. Beck, and he debuted in Whiz Comics #2. Now, on Captain Marvel, Shazam, on his debut issue's first cover, he's shown throwing a car up against a brick wall as 2 criminals bolt out the windows.
Wow.
Now, does that sound familiar? That image? Does that image sound familiar?
Well,
Because, it should.
Yeah.
It should, because it's pretty much the same cover of Action Comics #1, where Superman, who made his debut in this comic, he's shown hoisting a car over his head and driving it into the ground as the criminals inside escape.
Mm-hmm.
So, way too close for comfort at this time. You know, the similarities are just unmistakable. And here we are. We have 2 big, strong, caped superheroes in very colorful tights. But while Clark Kent got his powers from the Kryptonian physiology, Captain Marvel was in reality a young boy named Billy Batson who would receive his powers by shouting the magic word, Shazam! Now this is a recipe for success right here, because you're getting a young boy, and his wish fulfillment of any young boy is to be a superhero.
Mm-hmm. And an adult at the same time, like right away.
Yes. Now, Superman, he was the straight-laced Boy Scout, but Captain Marvel, he earned his moniker of the Big Red Cheese through sheer camp, a wink, and a nod. And we see a lot of that coming out in the film now.
Yeah. Yeah, at least in the trailers.
Now, once Captain Marvel found his audience, well, he was outselling Superman and beating him to the screen by receiving the very first live-action serial in 1941.
Film serial, right?
Film serial, yeah.
Wow.
So he was beating Superman on the newsstand, and he was the first one to make it to the silver screen.
Goodness.
So DC was like, okay, we gotta do something about this. And they pursued legal action against Fawcett Comics for copyright infringement. And the claim was simple. Captain Marvel was way too close to Superman for DC's comfort.
Okay.
Now, the courts ruled in DC's favor, and Fawcett Comics would never be allowed to print another Captain Marvel comic book. This is their big moneymaker. If Captain Marvel can no longer soar, well, the company is no longer. So guess what happened? The company was no longer.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so they closed shop?
They closed up shop, and the superhero genre was declining very rapidly. So, they figured, if there was ever a good time to lose the character, well, now's the time. We made our fortune, and now we're out. So at this point, Captain Marvel was a ghost. This character, this name, it was hanging there in limbo.
Okay.
And
this was kind of like in the early 60s, late 50s?
Yes.
Okay.
The 50s and the 60s. Couple of decades there.
Wow.
Where the name was just hanging there. Had nothing to do. It was in superhero limbo. But that's when Marvel Comics swooped in and trademarked the name Captain Marvel. And this was in 1967.
Wow.
So, wow. They saw something good and they wanted to have it. And it was too good of a name just to let sit there. So it would make sense that Marvel Comics would own the name Captain Marvel.
Well, definitely. And that's part of the confusion here.
Yes. So the character of Captain Marvel at Marvel Comics, it was born pretty much for legal reasons. And according to comic book veteran Roy Thomas, Stan Lee created the character Captain Marvel because of a resentment over the use of the name Captain Marvel.
Oh my gosh.
But you know what? It worked out in Marvel's favor.
Yeah.
Decades and decades to go.
Definitely.
But now, let's fast forward to the early 1970s. Superman wasn't quite the sales force he used to be, and in need of some fresh blood, DC turned to an unlikely source for help, its one-time main competitor, Fawcett Comics. And Fawcett Comics had re-emerged in the late 60s, but their hands were tied because here they are re-emerging with names like Dennis the Menace. That was one of their big titles back then, but they could not continue printing Captain Marvel comic books.
Right.
So now Fawcett Comics, well, they said, hey, if we can't print these comics and make more money from Captain Marvel, let's license the character out to DC Comics.
So right now, Marvel Comics has the license on the name Captain
yes,
Marvel, but
yes.
the actual character itself and like his whole boy turned into
to the superhero still belongs to Fawcett Comics.
Okay.
They have it, they just can't use it.
Right.
But they can't use it to print comics, but they can license the character, the name, out, and that's what they did to DC. And DC is like, oh, we got the big guy right here.
Okay.
We have Superman's main competitor, and that's Captain Marvel. So now you have the world's two biggest publishers, DC and Marvel Comics, both with high-profile characters named Captain Marvel. But there was a catch, because there always is. Since Marvel Comics owned the rights to the name, DC could not call its new character Captain Marvel.
Right, it can't use it on the cover.
Yes, it can't use it for promotion.
Okay.
So instead, all the comics went by the name Shazam.
Okay.
As did Captain Marvel's live-action TV show in the mid-70s.
Which you remember.
Oh, I lived off of Shazam. But this always confused me because the name of the show was Shazam, but his name was Captain Marvel. So up until like last night, I'm scratching my head here going, well, okay, who is what here? But his name was still Captain Marvel.
Right.
So DC could retain the character's name in the stories, but couldn't write the name on the books or the TV show.
Right, the covers or anything.
They couldn't call it Captain Marvel, but they could refer to Captain Marvel as Captain Marvel. You got that?
I think so.
Take a second, let that sink in.
No, I get it. Like, yeah, you can't like.
If there was a TV show based around you and it was called Jedi Tink,
right?
But in the show, everyone referred to you as Sarah,
right?
It's like,
that's exactly what it would be.
And yeah, so now only Marvel Comics could monetize the name Captain Marvel.
Right.
Now let's fast forward to 1991. DC had outright purchased Captain Marvel from Fawcett Comics.
Okay. So finally they said, let's stop licensing it. Let's just purchase this.
Buy it.
Okay.
But still, promotion was very difficult because there are only so many times you can put the name Shazam on a comic, but refer to him as Captain Marvel in the book without confusing young readers or young viewers like myself when watching the Shazam ISIS Hour.
Okay.
I still didn't know what was going on. Is he Shazam? Is he Captain Marvel? What's going on here? This is why I should have had therapy, just like Tim Burton said I needed. So now, in 2012, DC Comics decided to end the decades of confusion and simply rename the character Shazam. Come on, everybody thinks of him as Shazam already. So let's just make the leap and just call him Shazam.
So now it makes sense why there are two Captain Marvel movies coming out, because we have this Captain Marvel from Marvel Studios that just came out. And then what, in April now?
And DC Entertainment's Captain Marvel, Shazam.
Right.
That's where we are right now. So it's going to be very fun to see if there are any references to Captain Marvel in the new Shazam film.
Oh, right. Yeah, because they can call them. They
Yeah.
can't call it Captain Marvel, but I guess they can refer to
Right,
him.
but
Oh.
if DC's smart, they're not going to
No.
call anyone Captain Marvel because that would confuse the film goers in the movie, plus giving its main competitor a huge free promotion for Captain Marvel.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So I think they may dance around it a little bit, and I'm so excited to see that Easter egg.
Yeah, and I'm just excited to see Flynn Rider.
All right, well, all will be answered when Shazam hits the theaters on April the 5th. Patrick Izzo just said on Facebook, clear as mud. Thanks, Rich.
I understand now.
And now I understand it. Decades of confusion between Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, Shazam. You know what? I can sleep easily tonight. All right, now after all that, let's take a deep, spoilery dive into Marvel Studios' new release, Captain Marvel. Last year, the Marvel Cinematic Universe brought in a key element, diversity. An African American led the way in Black Panther. We saw a female superhero make it into the title of Ant-Man and the Wasp. But now, the MCU has taken another step forward with its first female-led film, Captain Marvel.
Here with us now to break down and discuss Captain Marvel is Geek Girl Diva herself, Shana O'Neil. And yes, there will be spoilers.
Warning. Spoilers ahead.
Hey, Shana.
Hey, how are you guys?
We are excited to talk this awesome Captain Marvel film on International Women's Day.
So true. It's so cool.
I mean, have you seen all the tweets and stuff? Like, it's so much fun today.
I've seen all the tweets. I also just saw, and literally I can tell you this because I just saw the news. Recent tracking, Deadline just did a midday update. And right now, Captain Marvel is heading toward $156 million to $160 million opening.
Awesome.
Whoa, and that's just US.
We're looking at potentially 400 million worldwide by the end of the weekend.
Wow. And I know that we're contributing to that because the Sunday is my birthday and we're going to go see it and actually pay dollars to see this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always feel like we're cheating out a film that we really like, want to see grow at the box office when we see the media screenings.
Oh, right.
So I always mail in my $15 to Disney Studios. So here you go.
And here it's funny because people think, all the trolls like to say they pay us. No.
No.
We pay to go see these movies, y'all.
Yes.
We love movies so much. But you know what? Before we begin our discussion on Captain Marvel, we'd love to know a little bit about your marvelous self.
Oh, I get that.
So can you just tell us a little bit of like who you write for, your favorite fandoms, just so our Skywalkers can get to know more about you?
Well, first and foremost, and it's the way we met, so it seems to me it's the most important, Star Wars is my undying love fandom.
Woo.
It was my first, and it is my longest and strongest. And I also big love for The Magicians.
Ooh.
Which is seriously my favorite show on TV right now. Supernatural fan. I'm a fan of Marvel. I will admit that I'm not as up to speed on the comics, but I very much like the Marvel, cinematic universe, and I enjoy movies as a whole. So pretty much a pop culture nerd. Currently, I write. I just recently did my very first movie review for Captain Marvel, which was really fun. That was for The Verge. And that was actually my first time for The Verge. I currently am writing regularly for Hypable.
Okay.
I also write occasionally for Slashfilm, The Hollywood Reporter. I go where they let me write about the things I love.
That's a pretty good resume.
That's how it works.
Well, you are legit.
Yeah.
You got all those in there. You get the Hollywood Reporter. That's they don't mess around.
Well, they don't, but it's nice. I one of the things I think you guys know this is I try to make the things I love work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how it started working out. I started looking for people who would let me go write about the things I love. So that's nice.
And that's why they call you the Geek Girl Diva.
This is why.
All right, well, let's talk Captain Marvel. And so we want to give you guys a brief synopsis. And once again, there will be spoilers throughout our discussion. So
And lots of them.
yeah, so if you haven't seen Captain Marvel or you don't want to know any spoilers, just please stop right now, go to the theater, and then hit play again.
Yeah. And that'll have a whole bigger, deeper meaning after you see the film, after we've broken it down.
Yes. Okay, so Captain Marvel is set in 1995, and the story follows Air Force fighter pilot Carol Danvers, who is played by Brie Larson, and it's her origin story as she becomes the superhuman Captain Marvel. Now, the story follows Carol as she becomes one of the universe's most powerful heroes when Earth is caught in the middle of a galactic war between two alien races. She runs into some familiar faces along the way, including Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson, and Agent Coulson, who is Clark Gregg. Both of them are wide-eyed newbies just starting their S.H.I.E.L.D. careers.
And one of the best parts of the film.
I know, right?
I'm just going to put that out there right now. But Shana, we want to hear from you. What were your overall thoughts on Captain Marvel?
My overall thoughts on Captain Marvel, I really enjoyed the film. Overall, as a film, I had a great time. It ticked all the boxes for me as far as what I want and expect from a Marvel movie. And when you get a little bit deeper, I really, really enjoyed Brie Larson's performance. I thought that one of the things that that I think is so interesting is that she actually essentially plays three different characters in this.
Mm-hmm.
Because she is, the first way around, she doesn't have her memory. And then when we get in there, first she's Veers, and then she gets her memory back and she's Carol Danvers. But then there's also Captain Marvel, who is definitely a third and different type of person that she ends up growing into. I loved the chemistry between her and Samuel Jackson. I thought the two of them were great. I had a couple issues with a little bit of the action. I'm really a stickler about editing in fights, and I was really I was like, don't cut so much. I really felt like they got a little choppy with the editing. And so I like to watch a fight, like the first fight between her and Jude Law. I really wanted to see them fight because I know they both trained really hard, to do stuff for this movie. And so I wanted to see that in action. And a lot of that fight felt to me like the way it got cut. I didn't really get to see a lot of the moves the way I would have liked to.
Yeah, this was cut more like a Christopher Nolan Batman fight scene because who's winning, who's hitting who, we have no idea what is going on with this fight, whereas you see a George Lucas edited fight film and it's brilliant because he gives you all these long shots, these establishing shots, so you know what is going on.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the Marvel formula, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's just something that it's a personal thing now that I tend to look out for. I loved the music. I loved the 90s nostalgia. I mean, that was just so much fun. And I loved the relationship between Carol and Maria. I thought that those two women, seeing really strong, powerful women, and not like in that I'm a strong, powerful woman way, but just confident, strong, knowing who they are.
Yeah, confident in their abilities.
Yeah, confident in their abilities. It's not that they have anything to prove in the sense of what they think they can do. It's the question of why nobody else really, can trust that they can do what they say they can do. And I love that when they get challenged on that, they rise, they basically show everybody up, which I just love. But that's me.
I love in the second act when Carol meets up with Maria, and you'd think that Carol knows her stuff. She's as confident as she can get, but yet she's got some more learning to do through Maria, and she goes through another big growth spurt because of the chemistry between these two characters.
Absolutely. And I think that really the fact that one of the things I very much liked about the film was that it slowed down to allow those scenes, those conversations between Maria and Carol. You don't see that a lot in the Marvel films, where two characters just basically sit down and have a heart-to-heart. and to go ahead and really slow things down and let those two have an extended conversation and really look into the changes they've been through, but also because Carol's still learning who she is. So she's there and Maria's helping her fill in the gaps of what she doesn't remember. I've never seen a female friendship like that on screen. Like, to me, that was different. And I like that they took the time to actually focus on that.
Yeah.
Very, very much so. All right, Sarah, what are your overall thoughts on Captain Marvel?
Well, yeah, I think different is a good word because this film really is a lot like, it's a different kind of origin story. And I love that. And I love how each Marvel film just really starts linking to the previous ones. You know, they each build upon the last. And if you've been paying attention, you're totally rewarded. And especially with this one, it's set in the 90s. So rather than just linking the dots between like Thor and Captain America and stuff to today, you actually get links to the Marvel Universe in the past as well as the present. So I think that was super cool. And I thought the tone of this film is so spot on. It's what we've come to expect from the Marvel Universe. You have these moments of action, you have these great character moments that we're talking about, and then you also have Marvel's trademark humor kind of peppering the whole thing. I mean, Samuel L. Jackson and Goose, come on.
Now, there's a spin-off for Disney Plus if I ever saw one.
Oh my gosh.
There's already, have you guys seen the Funko Pop of Goose? It is the
I have it.
thing.
Yes.
Yeah, we got that as swag.
So cute.
Yeah, did you get that too at the press conference?
Did.
Yeah.
I did. I was like, I need that one.
It's sitting next to my Captain Marvel doll. So, yeah.
Nice.
And like you said, Shana, I really love the character relationships that we see. There's no romance, but there's definitely the friendship and all the relationships portrayed just are very realistic to me. And I mean, we really feel Bree's loss of memory throughout these relationships that she's forming because she's formed them and yet she has to reform them. And I think they did that very well, like tap dancing between the different times and stuff. So,
and I personally like the lack of any kind of love interest.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big proponent of romance, but I did think it worked in this film to not have that as a crutch or anything.
And right now, DC is going, that's what we're doing wrong!
No, but Wonder Woman, I loved her romance, but then it was Chris Pine, so.
Right.
Pine
so
nut.
they didn't take any chances there. Now, for me, I walked into Captain Marvel with almost no expectations, no nothing. Because the trailers for this film did not move the needle. Didn't move my needle at all. It was just so, like, this could be any film at all. And they're just showing visual effects after visual effects. I just didn't see much. And every trailer relied on the scene where Carol is beating up the old lady who ends up being a Skrull. It's like, well, if you're using that same clip in every single trailer, then there's something wrong because you think that's the high point of the film. So I thought, you know what? I'll see it. It'll be fun, but I'll walk out there and ask, hey, what's for dinner? And it won't move me. However, boy, was I wrong.
Woohoo!
Was I wrong from minute one to the very last minute. This film had a very creative style in structure and origin storytelling, the same way that Ant-Man did by pulling off an origin story that we had never seen before.
Right.
Ant-Man relied on the heavy comedic conventions. Well, no, I shouldn't say conventions because they weren't. It was a whole different structure, which really made it stand above the rest of the origin stories. And now here, it's a mystery story. We were dropped in the middle, and we're learning about Carol Danvers as she's learning about her. And I thought that was extremely unique, very creative, and it kept your mind moving at all times. It wasn't just, here's plot 1, plot 2, plot 3. It made you work. And it slowed the film down a little bit in the first 35 minutes because you're trying to figure out what is going on. And it was getting to the point where it's like, okay, I need some answers. But at that point, that's when directors Ryan Fleck and Anna Boden, they summed up all of these pieces and moved forward. And I don't like those films, I'm looking at you, Vanilla Sky, that wait until the very end to go, okay, this is what's going on. Because at that point, I don't care anymore.
You're out of it.
I'm out of it. But here, just as soon as you're ready to say, I need to know what's going on, boom, here's what's going on. And I thought it was a very brilliant way of structuring the film that started off being non-linear, too linear, and now let's get this moving and set up this character who's going to be the most powerful character in the MCU.
Yeah. So what you're saying, really, Richard, is if you're going to the theater to see Captain Marvel, don't go to the bathroom for the first 35 minutes.
Oh, no. If you do, you're lost.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen the trailers yet, don't see the trailers. Because they do nothing. And then finally, I want to say how happy I am that they brought back Coulson. I was so sad when they killed him off in
Avengers.
Captain of the Avengers. Yes,
the first one.
I thought, I love Coulson. I know he's getting his own TV series with S.H.I.E.L.D., but I want to see him up on the big screen, and he's back because now we're going back to 1995.
Yeah.
I loved that they were babies. It was so cute. And I love that, because it's something we don't think about, I guess, that, we see Nick Fury and Coulson, and it's hard to remember that Coulson, when we first see him in Thor, is on the search for something, but he doesn't know really for what. And when he meets Thor, he's like, wait a minute, what? There's genuine confusion there. And it's not like he's just like, well, yeah, there's alien, you don't see that. And I think part of it is that as the movies have gone on, we've gotten very used to these two characters being, pretty nonchalant about some of these superheroes,
In Captain America First Avenger, Coulson becomes a fanboy. He's got the Captain America trading cards.
That's right.
Right. So the idea that to have them have that realization, and then you realize, oh my God, this is how this all started.
Yes.
And I thought that was really cool. To see them at a point where they're both much less jaded. It's their origin. It's the origin of the, the Avengers Initiative. And I think that's just so cool.
The fact that we've seen Fury the last 20 films and even some appearances on S.H.I.E.L.D., he's always been that one tough character that just can't wait to kick some butt and doesn't believe anything or anyone. And now here he is, happy-go-lucky.
Well, yeah, he's world-weary. He's like world one.
You know what? I've seen it. I've been there. I've got reasons to be the way I am, which makes him a great character. But now we get to flip him back to ground zero.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the past, we've gotten an introduction of new superheroes, not through their standalone films, but through other MCU films, like Black Panther and Spider-Man we saw in Captain America Civil War. And that was great for character exposition. Now, Carol Danvers had not only one life, but a couple, like you said, Shana, and there was a lot to explain. Now, what do you two think about this? Do we like these new characters popping up in other films where we can get the exposition kind of out of the way, or do you think it works best as a standalone film? Shana?
Here's the thing. I think that part of the reason that I think there are a few things about Captain Marvel that I didn't love has to do with the fact that it is on a mission. It has a lot that it has to do.
Yeah.
It has to, not only does it have to establish the origin story for Carol Danvers and Captain Marvel, it has to find a way to connect her to Nick Fury. It has to find a way to show us who she becomes. So first it has to show us who she is, then it has to show us who she becomes, and then it also has to somehow tie her into the events of Endgame. So when you look at this, a similar trajectory, Thor had 3 movies. The first movie of Thor was just it was literally his origin story. Thor falls to Earth. Here's what's going on. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It introduced us to the character. It put him into a situation, but it wasn't like we then had to figure out how to get him over here and into, the Avengers. But this movie had that expectation of how do we basically introduce her, show what she can do, give her all the power she needs to have, and then somehow set her up to show up in Endgame to fight with Thanos. And I think that was something that's a big job.
That's a tall order.
It is. I mean, similarly, I'm not sure how else they could have done it. Like, I mean, they did introduce Captain Marvel in the end of Infinity War with the pager, but not the character.
Right. Like, but see, I think in a way what that did was, like, it set up,
there's someone else.
We're going to get Captain Marvel.
Right.
But if you didn't know who Captain Marvel was,
right,
it's not like, it gives you the introduction. But I think they executed it. And personally, I think Carol showing up, because now we get Carol. Now we understand her. And my first thing is I can't wait to see her show up, because I'm sure she and Cap are going to get along.
Yeah. Both the same training.
Yes. Yep. She and Cap are going to get along. Pretty sure that she is going to connect with, the military types. I think she might actually connect in some way with Natasha. Like, she's a military lady, so I gotta figure that the military thing is gonna just, and I'm pretty sure she's gonna sass the heck out of Tony Stark.
Oh yeah,
that's where the major conflict will come in.
Looking forward to it.
Yes.
That'll be really, really funny. Now, for me, I love multi-character movies. I loved Civil War when you see all these characters come together. Oh, my 5-year-old self, it was just screaming in my movie seat. And besides, do we need another Spider-Man origin story? No, not whatsoever. So I love the fact that we had gotten characters in previous films before their standalone film, because it does, like I was saying, take care of a lot of their exposition. And I can't say enough that Captain Marvel does execute the exposition and the action and the story very, very well. But I'm just saying personally, the more superheroes you can stuff into a movie, the happier I'm going to be.
Always.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's move on and let's talk about, now, Shana, you've already mentioned some of them, but did any characters or character relationships in this film, Captain Marvel, really stand out to you?
Absolutely. The relationship between Maria and Carol, I think for me it was such a standout for me, because it also felt to me that it was unique in the sense that we know Okoye and Nakia and Shuri are all very close. We know that Okoye and Nakia are really good friends. But you don't really get, that's all somehow just, it's established by the story and the way the actresses interact with one another. And there are these little conversations they have together. But this is the first time that I can recall where I've seen two women sit down, just the two of them, having the conversation, not one but two, but also that you get the establishment of this friendship, that you see them, even if it's just in the flashbacks, you see them doing karaoke together. You see them hanging out in the bar. Right. You know they're friends, and you know they're, like, to me, the thing about their friendship was, it's a friendship that I think every woman in some way recognizes. We've all had that one friend that, we would go to the mat for, and they are the love. They are the love of your life in some way, that they are somebody that you can go to with anything, who will always tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. And it's not something I've seen in the films before. I wrote in my review that the closest I think we get is Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes as a similar relationship, because again, we have a shared history, and I recognize these women, and that's different to me. And I thought it was just really beautiful. And I thought that it was unlike anything I've seen. So those women, they've been friends forever. They're equal. They both have been through similar experiences. So the bond they have is built off a lot of different things.
Right.
Yeah, and Carol, at this point in the film, there's so much put on her shoulders. She's trying to put together her life, the whole galactic battle between the Skrulls and the Kree, and now she gets to Maria's place, and all of a sudden, Maria is talking to Carol, and you're not throwing the weight of the world on me again. So at that point, you did get a really realistic relationship, and you could see Carol finally slowing down and going, okay, I finally get this because someone's talking to me the way that I can now understand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also, I mean, I found it really cool to listen to the actors talk about this. Now, we all attended the press conference on February 22nd for Captain Marvel in Beverly Hills, and Shana, you wanted to bring up something from that press conference.
It was something that Brie Larson said in regard to the relationship between Maria and Carol.
I think that that's a really tight-knit bond that they have in their family. I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about in this film is, without being too showboating about it, this is the love of the movie. This is the great love. This is the love lost. This is the love found again. This is the reason to continue fighting and to go to the ends of the earth for the person, the thing that you love. And it's her best friend and her best friend's daughter, which to me is so natural.
That's a really interesting concept. And again, maybe it does have to do with the fact there's not a love interest. And when she mentioned it, I didn't even read it as any sort of, it's not about a romantic love. It's about that this is somebody I loved who I lost and who I have now found and who I am going to fight for and who is as important to me, that's that person that you're ride or die for. And I thought that the fact that it really is, in a way, Maria is Carol's heart.
Oh, I can see that.
Her heart, her conscience, you know what I'm saying? Like that there's that, she's a grounding force. And it's not until she gets to Maria that you see Carol really start to accept what she is.
Right. It's like, well, because Carol was wrestling with her power, and she had that power dampener, I guess, on her, to relegate the power of herself. But it wasn't until talking with Maria and like really grounding herself that she felt the confidence to take off that dampener and just really go for it with the whole the superpowers that were in her.
So
all
it's
along.
like Maria was Carol's Yoda.
Yeah?
Probably.
She needed someone to train.
When you have that sort of power, I think one of the things that women inherently kind of do, and I'm not saying men don't, but I think women inherently do, is because we're caretakers, because we tend to be kind of we look at the world in a situation of, okay, if I have great power, it's not just like, oh, I have great power, cool, let me blow stuff up.
The way a guy would.
But what is this power? What if I hurt people? And how do I use this for good? How do I keep control of this? Because and I think that's part of it too. I think she wrestles with what the power is and what it's going to do. And it's not until she fully is willing to trust herself and allow that power, but also to trust that she can control it.
Yeah.
And as soon as she learned that lesson, what did she need next? An awesome outfit.
Which the little girl helped create.
Maria's 10-year-old daughter picked out her superhero red, blue, and yellow outfit, and that was one of the best moments of the film.
Well, and it was funny too because it was one of my favorite movies, or one of my favorite things in the film. And when we were at the press screening, like, I thought it was so cool, and I was like, but the press screenings can be a little subdued sometimes. But I just heard from a friend who actually was at a screening last night and he was with like real people, that apparently that was one of the big that was one of the big reactions.
Nice.
I can see that.
People cheered.
Yeah, that was a great moment.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, like, people cheered, and I'm like, yes, it was a big deal, and it was cool.
Oh.
Then how many of these films does a 10-year-old make that kind of a judgment call?
Given that responsibility.
Yes. Awesome.
Totally nails it.
I stood up and I just pumped my fist. All right, so Sarah, what relationship in Captain Marvel really stuck out to you?
Okay, well, you guys can get super deep, but I'm going to get super shallow. And it's Fury's relationship with Goose.
Wow.
I mean, come on. Well, actually, in this movie, that does turn out to be pretty deep and pretty long-lasting in the MCU.
Uh-huh.
Because...
with some effects?
Yeah.
Some eye-popping effects?
So Goose, of course, is not just a cat. Goose is actually a flurkin, which is a random alien.
Hey, this is a family show. Watch your language.
What?
Oh, you said flurkin. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All right, continue.
And Goose. So apparently a very dangerous alien that, what is it? The mouth of the cat becomes an extremity that comes out and eats stuff, like the Tesseract or Nick Fury's eye.
Imagine a sarlacc coming out of the kitty's mouth.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of hilarious.
Yeah. A sarlacc or a Rathtar. Thank you. Yeah, that was funny. So I just, that was my favorite relationship. And the way that Fury just totally was all gaga over the cat. And even at the end when he was like, had his face nose to nose with the cat, it's like, you know what he does now, right? So why would you do that? Why would you put your face right next to the cat's face? And here I do want to bring up a comment from the press conference, and that was Samuel L. Jackson talking about Goose.
For a question to the answer to the last question, no, I am not a cat person. But I'm also not a dog, bird, or fish person either. So I just don't engage pets. Reggie is like most animals that, people bring to set that have been trained to do this, that, or the other. He's snack oriented, You give him something to eat, he shows up. You give him something to eat, you talk softly and nice to him, give him something to eat again, they love you, so it works out. And that was actually forecast, but Reggie did the majority. He did the, heavy lifting most of the time.
So I don't know if Samuel Jackson is trying to be funny, but everything he says is funny. Snack oriented.
Yeah, it was the way he put it that it was really funny. I just thought it was so perfect.
Do you recall in Captain America Winter Soldier where Fury alluded to this?
I sent the greatest soldier in history to make sure that didn't happen.
Soldiers trust each other. That's what makes it an army. Not a bunch of guys running around shooting guns.
Last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye.
Oh! He trusted a flurkin, and it backfired.
It did.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I love it. Wow.
All right, now I'm going to talk about a relationship that I really thought was interesting in this film. And that was Talus, who was a Skrull, played by Ben Krennic from Rogue One, Mendelsohn, between he and Carol Danvers. And once again, this is an MCU film that is giving us another great villain who is just doing what they believe is best, but not really doing it in the least harmful way. And what Talus is trying to do after he's been kicked out of his land by the Kree, trying to get all of his people and just get out of there. Of course, there's got to be some destruction along the way because the Kree are trying to destroy the Skrulls.
Skrulls, yeah.
So, of course, they're going to fight back. So you think the good guy's the bad guy and the bad guy's the good guy, but you have this great dinner table moment between Ben Mendelsohn, who's all made up as Talus, who looks like a vampire in the MCU. And how he's going over with Carol about what it is that he's trying to do. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, he's just trying to protect his family and get out of here. That's all he wants to do. And you see Carol going, oh, wait a minute. Maybe the Kree aren't what they seem to be. And the Skrulls, they're the ones who we should be protecting. And from that moment on, I just loved the heartfelt moments between Carol and Talus.
I agree.
Now, Talos comes on the heels of very powerful villains like Eric Killmonger from Black Panther and Thanos from Infinity War, and I say he's right up there. And all that credit really goes to Ben Mendelsohn, because once again, just like with Krennic, he just gives this person a fully dimensional character. It's not just you're good, you're bad, you're kind of good. No, he's got some levels here.
Right, and he has a clear trajectory, a clear story of why he's doing something. I mean, Eric Killmonger was the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And same with Thanos.
Yeah.
I mean, you understood what they were doing.
Yeah, and Eric Killmonger, he just wanted to protect Wakanda.
Yep.
And Talos just wanted to protect the Skrulls.
Yeah.
So I'm loving these. I'm loving these MCU villains.
Nice.
Now let's talk about how Captain Marvel ties into the rest of the MCU. Because Sarah, what did I say when we first walked out of the screening?
Oh, well, you should say it. Say what you said.
I was so jealous of the MCU because they're doing what the Star Wars franchise is not. And that's tying everything in perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a very well played Tetris game.
Yeah, definitely. And nowhere is that more prominent than the Tesseract, which of course Goose eats.
That was so great.
Like, well, how are you going to protect the Tesseract? Well, Goose. Dinner time.
Yeah. So now we've seen the Tesseract in many films, going back to Captain America, the First Avenger. So I just want to give like a little primer here.
Yeah, please.
On the Tesseract, because it's just this very important artifact. So here is the story of this object. It first appeared in Captain America, the First Avenger in the 1940s when Captain America retrieved it from Red Skull. But then, of course, he crashed his plane at the end of the film with the Tesseract on board into the ocean. So as of the 1940s, it is lost on Earth. Now, it was found years later by Tony Stark's dad, Howard Stark, and it's unclear what time this was, but it's before they found Captain America. Because at this point, Stark and S.H.I.E.L.D. then started up Project Pegasus, which we know was going on in the 80s, and they studied the Tesseract in an underground facility in the Mojave Desert. Now, this is where we find it in Captain Marvel, because Dr. Wendy Lawson, who's played by Annette Bening, she uses it to power her superpowered engine that then blows up and transfers that power to Carol Danvers. And also, her memory is gone because of that too. So really, Captain Marvel is also powered by the Tesseract, which is, fun fact, we're going to come back to that.
Okay.
Now, fast forward to the 2000s, we see the Tesseract again when it becomes the main plot device in Avengers, the very first Avengers film. Loki uses it to open a portal to the alien Chitauri in the Battle of New York. So that portal, where all those floating flying guys come into New York.
Yeah, those mechanical centipedes.
Yeah, that was actually the Tesseract opening that portal. So at the end of the film, Thor takes Loki and uses that Tesseract to return to Asgard, and then the Tesseract is put in Odin's treasure room. Now it stays there for a while until Loki steals it at the end of Thor Ragnarok when he's walking around with Hela. And so then you cut directly to the beginning of Avengers Infinity War, where Loki has the Tesseract and he's using it as a bargaining chip for his life. And he's bargaining with Thanos, but Thanos, being Thanos, he takes the Tesseract, he kills Loki, and then he breaks the Tesseract to reveal the first of his 6 Infinity Stone collection, the Space Stone. So now Captain Marvel is powered by this stone, and Thanos is too. So, leading into Endgame, what's going to happen?
Well, that answers a lot.
Yeah. Isn't that, I thought that was so interesting. So, this is one way, Richard, that Marvel, the whole universe is just tied together throughout these 11 years of film.
The Tesseract is to the MCU what Tatooine is to Star Wars.
Yeah, I could see that. Tatooine or the Falcon.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of.
Or R2-D2.
I guess.
Or 3PO. Or the Force.
Maybe the Force makes more sense.
Yeah, that's very true.
C-3PO, as in the bad penny that just keeps showing up. Got it?
C-3PO. Now, who is oh, yeah, the character they just seem to have forgotten about. But you know what? This is talking about Captain Marvel. All right, so, Shana, what did you see in Captain Marvel that tied this to the other MCU films?
Well, I mean, the very first thing is the pager. The fact that, we saw that pager on the ground at the end of Infinity War. And I remember when it was blinking, and the big question was, how is he using a pager to find her? Like, what is that going to do? You know what I mean? Like, we were all like, what? How's that work? And I think one of the cool things was that now we know that the reason that pager works is because it got upgraded.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a silly little thing, but I was like, well, that explains that. Because I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't get how this is going to work. So the fact that she did that work and helped to upgrade it, I think is really interesting. And I think what really ties this, I mean, the big thing that ties all this together ultimately is Nick Fury, because, he's the one who pulls this all together. But the fact that we know that Fury called for her, that she had upgraded the tech, which means she can show up to save the day. Well, save the day, but she can show up to come be a hero.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I love in Captain Marvel itself is the fact that they didn't just have the pager be her one communications thing. It's like immediately at the start of the film when she lands in the 90s in the blockbuster, she goes and finds a payphone and upgrades that to be a communications device that she can then talk on. I mean,
love that.
Yeah.
I seriously loved that. Like the fact that she's with a payphone, that obviously the nod to Radio Shack, I died. But the fact that this woman she's like, all right, well, I need to communicate with space.
Yep.
Let's go.
Let's do
Let me
it.
go take a payphone and a bunch of Radio Shack components and make it work.
It's a great establishment of her character and a reason for this little pager that shows up everywhere.
Now, if this film doesn't bring back the technology of pagers, nothing ever will. And it'll be fun to get this on DVD and pause it when she breaks through the ceiling of the Blockbuster video and just to see what films are, because every single DVD or VHS tape they showed is a reference to something.
Well, I still love that she took out a True Lies standee. That got me.
And then she picked up a film, not Top Gun, which would have been funny, but The Right Stuff. She picked up The Right Stuff.
So the fact that she picked up The Right Stuff to me was a big deal. But also one of the things was the name of the bar. The bar was called Pancho's Bar. And so I was like, I wonder if that is an Air Force reference. And so I went and did a little digging. And it turns out that the name of the bar, there was a woman who full name, I'm spacing on the full name right now, but she went by Pancho Barnes.
Oh.
Pancho Barnes owned a dude ranch, basically. And again, I'm spacing the name right now, but she was this person. She owned this dude ranch. It was near Edwards Air Force Base. And the bar scenes in The Right Stuff were shot at that dude ranch.
Whoa.
Well,
So they went and put in this a couple of beautiful little Air Force Easter eggs, which I thought was so cool.
This was the bar where they were doing karaoke, right?
Yep, this is the bar where they were doing karaoke, and then the bar where she met with Fury.
Right, and then I wonder if that's the actual bar that they shot in for this film.
I don't know, but I do know that that the name itself is got to be a nod. It's got to be.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's way too coincidental.
Yeah.
It's way too coincidental to me.
All right, so Richard, what else did you see that ties the MCU together?
There were many, many things. One of which, at the very end, when we see Fury and he's putting together this new protective initiative. what do I call it? Protective initiative, just doesn't have the ring that, what is this? He looks over at a picture of Carol Danvers at her airplane, and on the side of the plane, it says her name, Carol Avenger Danvers.
I loved it.
And then he goes, wait a minute, goes back to his computer and writes out Avengers Initiative.
And that's her call sign, Avenger. That's so cool.
The whole theater erupted at that moment.
Mm-hmm. I loved that.
And of course, we see some crossover characters like Ronan the Accuser and Korath the Pursuer, who we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy. But this time around, they're playing the good guys.
At least most of the film.
So we think. So I'm thinking, if anyone really remembers these characters, they'll be kind of confused. Like, wait a minute, I thought Star-Lord was facing off against these guys. So what's going on? But to the average viewer, I don't think they'll connect those dots at all.
No.
If you're really a big Marvel fan, I think you get it. I think if you're not a big Marvel fan, it might confuse you.
Perhaps. But I know, well, in Guardians of the Galaxy, the Kree are the main bad guy. They're like the bad guy. They're trying to cause genocide to whatever that other race is.
Yeah, I found it a little confusing, but I knew as we went along the film, it was going to answer that. So it wasn't a hang-up at all.
Yeah. And
another Guardians of the Galaxy parallel I would make is the awesome mix soundtrack that it has.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Captain Marvel, they've got songs from REM, Nirvana, No Doubt.
Yep.
And it really planted us in the 1990s.
Totally did. I was actually surprised at how nostalgic I felt because I was not like while I grew up in the 90s as a teenager, I was not into pop culture at that point, at least musically. So yeah, but I still, some of that stuff seeped in.
Oh, when they had that whole sequence, all cut around, smells like Teen Spirit from Nirvana. At that point, I thought, boy, I'm getting Guardians of the Galaxy tinglings here.
Ah, nice.
And of course, like we had mentioned, another tie-in was why Nick Fury needs an eye patch.
Yep.
And why is that?
Well, because our lovely little fluffy flirkin.
Yeah, just reaches up and scratches Fury in the eye.
That's the best. All right, well, let's move on to Easter eggs in this film, and of course,
pick me.
Oh well, Shana already mentioned one about the
nacho bar, right?
Yeah. So, Richard, what's yours?
Stanley, and this is the first time in an MCU film where he's playing himself.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's on the bus and he's reading the script to mall rats.
Oh, that's so funny.
Right now, Kevin Smith is going, you know what? I can die a happy man. Bring on another heart attack. I can take it. Any other Easter eggs?
I'm sure they were there, but honestly, like at the moment, they're not popping in my head because now, of course, I have performance anxiety. And I can't remember any of them.
That's fine. Yeah, I think we need to watch this film again to kind of get even more Easter eggs. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing it again on Sunday because I know we'll see some more. So,
well, just like when we saw Captain America, we had gone home and watched a YouTube video on all the Easter eggs. Like, there's like a 50,000 in the first Avenger, Captain America, the first Avenger. It's like, how do we miss this and that and this and that?
Yeah.
So the story was so dense and you're being really taken in by the story. So it's very little wonder that all these obvious Easter eggs would have gone over our head.
Definitely. So let's move on then to our biggest laughs of the film because Marvel just has this awesome humor in it. So, Shana, what was your biggest laugh?
The thing that got me was just the dialogue. Like there were certain conversations back and forth that just kind of had me.
When Fury and Carol were in Maria's house, they're washing dishes and they're talking about Marvel and they're going back and forth about, is it Marvel? Is it Marvel?
Yes.
And I really want them to break the fourth wall and have Fury say, no, it's Marvel, like the comic book.
Yeah.
He didn't say that, but that would have been super cool.
I'm the audience going, come on, Sam, you gotta say it. You gotta say it.
That would have been, well, yeah, like you said, Shana, like anything that Samuel L. Jackson says is just funny. The way he like says lines. So that was hilarious. But one of my favorite moments were I mean, this film is so fast and furious and intense, but there's a moment when they're at Maria's and they're uploading just a little audio file, and it takes like 5 minutes.
I know what my biggest laugh was, and it was a goofy little thing, but when Carol's in the internet cafe and it's Alta Vista search.
Yeah.
I admit, I laughed like loud.
I wanted to see AOL there somewhere too. Like an AOL screen name.
I was like, oh my God. You know.
And the whole internet cafe thing. I mean, those don't exist anymore.
No, you can do that on your phone.
Yeah.
Your phone is an internet cafe. The biggest laugh for me, the biggest laugh is the DC dig.
Uh-oh.
And that's when Carol said, superheroes shouldn't walk around with insignias on their chest. Oh my goodness. I just left the theater at that point. It can't get any better than that.
Yeah, Shana, did you hear Richard laughing?
I probably did.
You know what? You take Spider-Man out of the equation because he's got the spider, but you think about Superman and Batman and Robin and Flash all get the big insignia right on their chest.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that had to be a fun DC dig.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, like every Marvel movie, Captain Marvel has tags. So let's just go over them for everyone, because I know I get confused as to which tags go to which film. So the first tag takes place right after Infinity War. So all of a sudden we like go up to the present, and you see Carol as Captain Marvel.
Well, we see all the Avengers trying to figure out what just happened. This is after the Thanos snap. So you see all the surviving Avengers in the laboratory, and they turn around.
Yep, and Carol is right there, or as Captain Marvel, and she's like, "Where's Fury?"
Yeah.
Oh, got some bad news for you.
Yeah, you better sit down.
So that was awesome, and I can't wait to see, like, that just sets up Endgame for me. That's all I needed for Endgame.
I think that was her finest acting moment right there. Just the way she said, "Where's Fury?"
Nice.
Loved it.
And then, of course, there's the second tag. And I have a question for you guys on this one, because this is when Goose, he's sitting on Fury's desk, and you see a big computer. So I'm assuming this is still the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
And Goose is doing what all cats do at some point, and that is throwing up a fur ball. And instead of a fur ball, it's the Tesseract.
Absolutely.
I just loved that. So do you guys think that it's still the 90s at that point?
Oh, yeah.
I would say so, because the Fury's office doesn't look any different.
Yeah.
No, I think it was directly after that. I think it's that, you know, we basically, it's our way of getting back, like, wait a minute, the Tesseract, wait. You know, and like you said, because it has a place of where it was, we know the Tesseract, like, you're like, oh, right, the cat ate the Tesseract. Where's that? Mm-hmm. And because Nick had made the comment about, I'm just waiting for the cat to spit it up.
Yeah.
And plus, you know, they have to get it back at some point, so it has to come out of Goose at some time.
I just like how it comes up.
Yes.
A totally cat moment.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Hairball.
All right. From cat moments to really deep discussion. That's
one of the things I really like about this movie, though.
Yes. Well, okay. So, of course, Captain Marvel is our first MCU female-led film. So what do you think furthers females in film and female superheroes more? Would it be this film or Wonder Woman or perhaps another like TV or film?
Shana?
I personally have to say I'm wary of comparisons.
Okay.
And maybe it's because nobody asked this question about male-led movies. It's just a question of representation. So is it about pushing representation more as opposed to just being representation? Mm-hmm. And maybe that's part of it, is that when we talk, you know, sometimes it's easy to talk about, you know, unfortunately there are a lot of negative fan comments that get made, and one of the comments that gets made is about the feminist agenda. And I think the difference is to me, it doesn't have to do with an agenda. It has to do with the fact that movies, to a great degree, still represent a certain portion of the population. They don't represent a variety of people in the population the way they could. And so the fact that Wonder Woman, was one of the first, it was the first DC in the DC universe for their movies. And so here comes Carol and Captain Marvel. And I think that what really for me would be great is that, Wonder Woman came out and did really well. And now Captain Marvel's come out. It's done really well. And one of the things that was used, I think, and this is, Ike Perlmutter, who owns or did at one point, I don't know what the statistics are now, but, he owned Marvel. And one of the things that he said was that because Catwoman and Elektra didn't do well, that female-led movies don't work. And of course, my response to that is, okay, first of all, that was 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And secondly, maybe the movies didn't do well, not because they were led by women, but because they weren't very good movies.
Right.
But it was used as an excuse to not front women in these movies. And the other part of it is that there's this belief that within the movie-going universe, and especially within the nerd community, that if a movie is fronted by a woman, that it will not do as well because men are the largest demographic of the nerd community, which also is being proven not to be true.
Right. Especially
So
as
for
like
me,
merchandise is concerned and things like that.
absolutely. And that's one of the things, we see it with Star Wars. We've pushed for years to get more merchandise for women. And isn't it interesting how much of this merchandise is out now, how well it's doing because we need to spend money too. So I really hope that what this does is I hope that it just makes it clear that it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a man leading the film, that a female-led film will do as well, that it can compete, and that maybe what it'll do is to help change the mentalities behind the scenes who believe that movies have to have a certain makeup in order to work. Black Panther broke the mold for what they thought was supposed to be. That was absolutely representation. So I would personally like to see just more representation. To me, if this movie doing well means that there's an executive somewhere who goes, when someone tries to say, well, girls can't do, someone can point to this and be like, yes, they can.
Right.
Yep. So I think that has a lot more to do with, it's not so much for me who helps to bring that forward so much as that it helps to we now have more empirical evidence in the fight to get more of that representation.
And plus, there have been a lot of Facebook comments today with people saying, Captain Marvel's coming out, can't wait to see it, and they're guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And back in the 90s, a lot of these big film studios were run by guys. But today,
exactly.
A lot of them are female now. So we've been to the Disney lot or Fox lot to see a film, and we'll see a lot of female executives in these production companies. So I think the conversation is going to turn from male to female to a movie.
Yeah, that is the hope, and that is the overall hope. And I think Captain Marvel did succeed in the fact that, like, I wasn't really questioning, like, it didn't really say, look, here's a female superhero. It just said, look, here is a hero. And I thought, that's the way I perceived it in my mind. And I thought that was incredible. Like, she could have been any race, any gender, any religion. It really didn't matter. She was just a person trying to find herself. And I think she was utterly relatable. And one of the things that's interesting about Captain Marvel is that a lot of the crew was female. So if you stay, if you stay for the credits, you see one of the editors is female, one of the directors, of course, Anna Boden, the casting director, the composer, even, Pinar Toprak.
One of the things that also there's been a push, and this has been a lot of a push, for requests for diversity, is why don't we have more women behind the scenes? I think part of this is that when you're opening up these opportunities to these women, then they'll come in, they'll step in, and they will feel more, they feel empowered to come in and do their work. And I think that that's part of it, is that when somebody actually gives you an opportunity to do something that you're good at, and you get to finally show that you're good at it, that it's freeing to do, and that it's become more prevalent, but it's still not an equitable situation. Victoria Alonso, who is one of the producers, she's produced so many of the Marvel movies, and Victoria Alonso's been a really good voice, I think, for that kind of diversity, but also just opening up and more inclusion. So I have no doubt that she's, part of the support that's going on, that as there are more women included, more women feel like they can be included.
Right. Well, just look at Lucasfilm, run by Kathleen Kennedy. Look at the Star Wars Story Group, run by 98% females.
Right. Yep.
So I think they're taking on these big positions now, and I'm not sure if they're really thinking, will my voice be heard? Now, with all of these predecessors like Kathleen Kennedy, they just know that I can get in there and I can speak my voice.
Right, but don't forget, and I say this with love, because we know I love Star Wars and I love Lucasfilm, that we're still pushing Lucasfilm. We're still pushing for a female director at Lucasfilm.
And we have one for The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
That's right.
But we're still pushing for a woman on a film. Now we've got Victoria Mahoney, who is the second unit director on episode 9. But there's a lot of projects coming out of Lucasfilm, and we're still asking. And so that's one of those things, that Anna Boden is the first female director on a Marvel film, and this is the 21st film.
Right.
But I think that part of it is that when you have a woman being part of the creative team, what you get is a different perspective, which I think creates a different kind of film. And that's not to say that it's better or worse. It's different. And that's why certain things in the film, I think, might have related to me in a different way. I might have felt them more strongly because the way they were written felt more like I understood it in a different way, if that makes sense.
Well, I think Patty Jenkins set the course for female directors with Wonder Woman. You just cut out all the parts by Zack Snyder and you got a great film. So I think that, and now Anna Boden with Captain Marvel, I think we're going to start to see a whole lot more female directors come in. And who's to say that they had gone to female directors and they said, no, I'm good.
Who knows? But I think that ultimately what it does is it shows, let's just put it this way. We had a woman starring in this movie. We have a woman co-directing this movie. And the movie didn't, the movie hasn't turned into some, I mean, it's a good movie. There's nothing wrong with it. We can do stuff and it's still good.
And also, we can rock things. I don't know if you saw, but at the press conference, Anna Boden was rocking the Captain Marvel Vans shoes.
Yes.
And they looked amazing. All right, well, let's move on and rank Captain Marvel. Where does this fall in our, let's say, top 5 MCU film rankings?
A very, very tough question, so it takes some time.
Yeah.
This is hard. I really love Captain America, and I really love The Winter Soldier. I think Black Panther is my number 1. Thor Ragnarok is my second. And then Spider-Man Homecoming's probably up there.
Yeah.
I can't say that I would put it, because I also I love the Avengers and I love the first Iron Man. So I'm thinking that it's not in my top 5, but it may be in my top 6.
Okay.
But I'm also, I think, here's the thing, is I think it's going to vary on what people look for. So while it may not be in my top 5, I could see where it would be in other people's top 5. But I think that, it's definitely in my top 10. And I think that what it is, though, I think it will be a movie that, when I want to just go and enjoy myself and watch a kick-ass lady, this is going to be the movie I go to.
Nice.
All right, Sarah.
Okay, so I think number 1 for me is Guardians of the Galaxy. That movie just really, I had low expectations and that just hit me. Like, I just love that film.
It's a feel-good film.
It is. The music, like the tone, I just love it.
Just the music alone.
And Groot and, oh, it's awesome. So that would be number 1. Number 2 would be Captain America Civil War. Because, again, you have these 12 superheroes coming together. And if you've been invested in the MCU, you know where every one of them is, character-wise and everything. And I just love the fact that they made Iron Man and Captain America complete enemies in this film when they were just 100% together. Like, that's hard to do.
Yeah, that film made my list, but I took it out because I don't want to see superheroes fighting each other.
Aww.
Come on, we should all be friends. I can't take that.
All right, so number 3, I think Captain Marvel is number 3 for me right now. So
nice.
Go Captain Marvel. And then number 4, even though it was very trying, I would say Avengers Infinity War. Because once again, you have everyone coming together. There's a huge story that really affects the whole universe. And then number 5, oh, see, now it's changing. I wrote down Spider-Man Homecoming, but maybe Ant-Man. I don't know, between those two, because they're both kind of offbeat.
All right, well, Shana had a 6th, so...
Okay, so there you go. Spider-Man and Ant-Man.
All right, for me, this is my personal top 5, and I picked them for what they brought to the party. First and foremost, Captain America, First Avenger.
Nice.
I've always been a huge Captain America fan, and this was my movie when it came out.
Aww.
Loved the film, loved the Red Skull, and I just love the fact that we know where this is going to go into the Avengers in current day. Loved it. Next, I would say Avengers Infinity War. As hard as this film is just because of the Thanos snap, it had such a huge impact on the whole world. And that's the kind of film that I like. When something has an impact, a film just doesn't begin, middle, and an end, and that's it. And it ties up in a nice bow. This has sincere consequences. Next, I would go to Guardians of the Galaxy.
Woohoo!
That soundtrack puts it over the edge. I love Star-Lord. Chris Pratt brings that home to me. Rocket Raccoon. And I just love every minute of that film, especially in the end when Groot makes his big Groot nest.
Aww.
Yeah, you try getting through that scene with a dry eye.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, it gets me.
Next, I would say Ant-Man, just because I said earlier, this had such a different take on an origin film, and the whole montage where it's like playing a game of telephone.
Hell yeah!
That right there is probably the best sequence in every one of the Marvel films, I would say. And then my 5th would be Captain Marvel, because once again, it's a completely different kind of film. It's a mystery film, and I thought this film really stakes a claim in the MCU.
So, Richard, you really like origin stories. You got 4 of them up there.
You know, you're right.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a sucker for films with a lot of superheroes in them, for the multi-character.
Oh.
Yeah, but Civil War, it's like, come on, Cappy, Iron Man, don't fight. Can't we all just get along and go watch Wonder Woman?
Oh, I would love to see that. Superheroes going to the movies.
Yeah, so this list took me about 2 hours to put together. Because I'm going through every list. And I would say number 6 for me would be Spider-Man Homecoming.
Okay, nice.
You have a great Spider-Man story that does not have to rely on the origin spider bite. And since we've seen that so many times, but wait a minute, can I say a 7? Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse?
No, that's not part of it.
Okay,
I mean,
okay,
technically
just the MC.
it's not
okay, just
Marvel
MC.
Studios.
Well,
so.
then again, Homecoming was Sony, so.
Oh, that's right. Ooh.
So love Spider-Man Homecoming. It's close enough.
Okay.
You can reach out. The MCU could reach out and pull it back into its universe.
And I just love that ending. What the?
Yeah, and you have Michael Keaton. First he's Batman, now he's Vulture. Love it.
All right.
You know what?
Wow.
I think we've covered everything having to do with Captain Marvel, one of the greatest superhero films you'll ever see.
I know. So head to those theaters, you guys. Woohoo!
It just came out March the 8th.
Although hopefully if you've been listening to this, you've already been to the theaters. All right. Well, Shana, would you like to tell our Skywalkers where to find you on social media?
Best way to find me on social media is under Geek Girl Diva. All you got to do, and that's pretty much where I am on everything. So even if you just go to Google, type in Geek Girl Diva, you will find me.
I love it. Simplifies everything. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.
Yay. That wraps up episode 241 of
Skywalking Through Neverland. We'd like to thank Shana O'Neil for sharing her insights of Captain Marvel. And, of course, we'd always love to thank you Skywalkers for tuning in every single week on Facebook, all you face huggers, and for listening to the show. Thank you, thank you.
Now, if you would like even more Skywalking Through Neverland in your life, please check out skywalkingforce.com. It's where we plus up our content and offer extras just for you. So you can be a part of the Skywalking Force at skywalkingforce.com. And if you are a part of it, you can unlock a new t-shirt design. It says Skywalking Force, and it's really awesome.
Yeah, we're going to do some commentaries on some animated Disney movies that are coming to live action very soon.
Yeah, like Dumbo, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
Aladdin.
Aladdin, thank you.
And Lion King.
Oh, fun. That'll be super fun.
That'll be really, really fun.
Also announcing, we have a new design for Star Wars Celebration Chicago, and it's really more of a design to celebrate 2019 and all the awesome Star Wars things that are coming out this year. So if you head to skywalkingthroughneverland.com and click on the links for TeePublic, that's how you can click through to get that t-shirt design. Or you can just follow us on social media. I've sprinkled that link everywhere on social media as well. So if you'd like to support us there, please do. And if you'd like to support us in a different way, you can just share the show with a friend. And then also on our website, you can click on links to Pozu shoes, Oppo suits, or TeePublic on our website, skywalkingthroughneverland.com.
Thanks to everyone for sharing, and Dora Speck, you've been sharing up a storm over there.
Absolutely.
So thank you for all your support.
Also, our YouTube channel right now has a lot of fun things. It's youtube.com/skywalkingthroughneverland, and right now there's a video that I put together of our meeting with Reggie, who plays Goose the Cat, but also there was some comments in the press conference by Samuel L. Jackson and Brie Larson about working with Reggie. It's hilarious. So you just go to that video. It's like 4 minutes long, and it's the cutest thing ever.
And if you go over to our website, skywalkingthroughneverland.com, we just posted a celebration of the Phantom Menace fast food premium toys.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And a lot of people have been commenting on social media that they remember and what they liked and everything. So, yeah, thanks. And if you could share that around too, that would be great.
Yeah, Pizza Hut, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Taco Bell all had their big promotions. And boy, in 1999, I ate a lot of fast food. And I got a lot of toys.
I just remember Taco Bell.
So we gathered all that information and made one comprehensive list.
And pictures too.
And pictures
and
commercials. Mm-hmm. We also did it for the Star Wars original releases and the special editions, how they always had fast food premiums. Now, you can find Skywalking Through Neverland at jedinews.co.uk and at fanthatracks.com.
And you can also follow us on social media. We are at Skywalking Pod for Twitter and Instagram. And if you were following us on my birthday, we actually shared some little bits of video and stuff from the Dumbo press conference where I got to meet Danny Elfman.
You met Danny Elfman, and Tim Burton told me I should see a psychiatrist.
Exactly. It's too much fun. All right, you can also email us. We are share@skywalkingthroughneverland.com, and we have our Facebook group, which is a wonderful group. You can actually go there. You can search Facebook for Skywalking Through Neverland group and answer the 2 questions that pop up. We also love Apple Podcast or Stitcher reviews, and right now we're having a giveaway for Apple Podcast reviews, so head on over there and give us a review, and your name will be entered. Woohoo!
To win a big box of great stuff.
Yes.
All right, now stay tuned for bloopers and other fun conversations right after the credits, but as always, you must remember
to go higher, further, faster, and
Neverland on Alderaan.
Some imagination, huh?
To our Skywalkers and Tweetwalkers, thanks for listening. Skywalking Through Neverland is created and produced by Richard and Sarah Woloski. Original music by Rob Dellinger. Creative consultant Mark Augushowitz. Technical advisor Peter Heitman. Facebook administrators Donald Wicks, Joey Pittman, and Norma Heitman.
Skywalking Through Neverland is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Any sounds, music, and clips played during this podcast are the property of their copyright holders. All original content is property of Skywalking Through Neverland, all rights reserved. Sorry, had to be said.
Goose is ready. All right, but first, let's record. All right, you guys ready?
I want to give stuff away.
Mom, oh, give away the little cat. Give away the cat?
That's not going to happen. I can't even touch the cat. See?
I don't know.
She won't even let me near the cat. The cat was snuggling with me.
I know.
Snuggling.
Thank you,
Did you not
Patrick.
see the video on YouTube, on Skywalking Through Neverland YouTube channel? And what are the listeners called? It's called the Skywalkers.
They're the Skywalkers, yeah.
Okay, the ear huggers.
No, they're
the
Skywalkers.
Okay, all right. Just working it through. Working it through.
She was originally named Ms. Marvel to differentiate. Blah. Wow.
All right. Hold on here.
Yes.
Hold on. There is, let's punch up Lashana. What's her last name?
Lashana something. Hold on.
Yeah, hold on. We're going to make one correction because Monica
Lynch
is the daughter.
Oh, what?
Yes.
Oh. Captain Marvel Maria.
Maria. Okay. All right. That changes some things.
Okay, yes, it does. All right. Okay, here we go.
Right, so.
All right.
So we're just kidding there.
Okay, so here we go.
Let's start this again.
Let's start this over,
and we can say who Monica is.
Yes.
All right, now with that behind us, let's now take a deep dive into Marvel Studios' new release,
Captain.
I was gonna say Marvel.
Shazam!
I was gonna say Marvel is Captain Marvel.
Oh, okay. Now I'm gonna have to go back and watch Marvel Rising Secret Warriors and see if the cat is there, because I don't remember necessarily the cat.
And do you know what the cat's name was in the comic book series?
Oh yes, Chewie.
After
Chewie.
After Chewbacca, yes.
Yes, it was. I do remember
they
that.
went and renamed him Goose after Anthony Edwards' character in Top Gun.
Yes. Which I think is cool. I mean...
Yeah, they could not call the cat Chewbacca in the movie.
No, it'd be way too confusing.
Yeah.
Wow.
They would never allow that.
Okay.
Why not call him Maverick?
Oh!
Hey! This is a family show!
That was recorded, too.
Nice!
In the blooper reel.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. And?
Go wash out your mouth with soap.
Not me. Oh, I guess it was me. Okay, anyway.
No, it's Shana. No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that because then it's going to mess you up.
Gonna mess you up.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I spoke first and then thought.
All right, Richard. You're up. So get your shit. But, all right, guys. So we are going to start editing this bad boy.
Yeah.
And get it out there and just celebrate Captain Marvel and woohoo, go see it.
And Maria is that friend that every girl needs. When you're walking out of the house and a friend stops you and says, hey, what are you wearing? Take that off. We're not going out until you take that hat or those shoes off because you look ridiculous. And in the end, you realize, oh, you know what? You were right. You're the friend who's going to tell me the way it is.
Right.
All right. With that behind us now, let's now take a deep spoilery dive into Marvel Studios' new release, Captain Marvel.
Shazam!